So I'm not up there. My name's Sam Whitaker. I'm a friend of Jordan's, and they asked for somebody to help out and moderate. So I'm going to do that and figure out what the talk's actually about. So this is kind of a big thing: Bitcoin, NFTs, security. It's a lot of pieces, and I think everybody here kind of has a piece to the puzzle. So why don't we just have everybody introduce themselves, and we'll get started and figure it out along the way. Jordan, you want to start something?
Sure. I'm Jordan Freed. I've done a bunch of stuff in the space, but I actually found Bitcoin while I was over here living in Europe, running a consumer VPN brand called Buffered VPN. I was an American expat living in Budapest, wanted to watch the American Netflix library, and started a VPN service, started taking Bitcoin as a payment method in 2013. And then after that, moved back to New York, became part of the founding team of a blockchain called Hedera Hashgraph. Has anyone heard of Hedera? H-bar? There we go. Yeah.
I've never heard of them.
Hey, Larry. Love you, Larry. And that was a blast. We got a lot of enterprise traction. We were in that cohort of like Ethereum killers. We never called ourselves an Ethereum killer, of course, but that was like Algorand, Avalanche, Hedera, Solana. Still a chip on my shoulder that Hedera is not top 10. We'll get there one day.
Give it time.
And then today I'm running NFT.com. So NFT.com is our latest venture. I left Hedera to start a venture studio down in Puerto Rico. And NFT.com is our venture where we're doing some fun stuff. So that's me.
Yeah, that's nice. And I'm Andreas, and I've been in the kind of Bitcoin space for quite some time now as well. So that's how it started for me. And around 2014, I started the first Bitcoin party in Sweden because we wanted to challenge the politics to actually bring up these questions. Because back then it was only like renegades fucking around with it. So, then 2017, I joined the biggest Bitcoin exchange in Sweden as well, called BTCX. In the beginning of this year, I joined the early stage startup Another Block, and we're working with NFTs to make music rights investable for everybody. So when you hold one of our NFTs, you get a percentage of the streaming revenue of that certain song. So that's how it works.
Hey everyone, I'm Nat. Been around in the crypto space for some time now professionally, but first found out about Bitcoin back in 2013. I was a musician at the time, an engineer, and I was moving into the VoIP telecom space. I wanted to be like a communications networking expert, ethical hacker and all of the rest of it. Ended up coming across Bitcoin and then started just delving deeper into it. First idea was, what is this thing? Kind of like blew my mind for a little bit. Took me really about 9 months to catch on to what was actually going on. Discovered the blockchain, wanted to build like music royalties, music rights on the blockchain. Realized that there was a lot of development obviously going on, and I was a lot far behind. So I just started out educating people, thinking about building like an education protocol that could reward people in Bitcoin. Took a couple of years of researching and going around in the space. And ended up knocking that one on the head eventually. But during the meantime, I became a consultant in the space through just helping people, helping local businesses, helping people set up a wallet, really basic stuff. Did a bit of blogging like back in 2015, 2016, 2017, and saw the whole kind of ICO thing play out. Came around to 2020, and I decided to kind of like, I saw what was going on with the NFT scene, and decided to kind of provide a bit of real world utility to NFTs because I knew they'd been around for a long time. It wasn't really, I'd say for any of us in the space, it wasn't really anything much new, but the explosion for me was like, okay, we've got to bring this around to something physical and also be able to teach people the underlying message of decentralization and why we all got here in the first place. Rather than people just jumping in and getting rug pulled. So yeah, that was it really.
So thanks guys. So I think a big question, and this is for me too, we're talking about Bitcoin and NFTs. And usually when you think about NFTs, we think of smart contracts, we think of Ethereum. I think of Hedera, so does Jordan, but Solana, everything else. So Bitcoin and NFTs, why are we talking about them together?
Maybe I'll start. I think the biggest problem in our space in 2022 is tribalism and fragmentation. There's lots of protocols represented here, and we're seeing lots of protocols being used. Reddit's issued collectible avatars on the Polygon blockchain. We've got a massive NFT ecosystem around Ethereum, and their, of course, move to proof of stake and their move to be more efficient and performant. We have Hedera, they're here at the conference, but there's NFTs on the Stacks blockchain and on Bitcoin. When you look at layer ones, really layer ones are somewhat destined to become, I believe, commoditized, much like cloud. When you're using an iOS application, you don't say, hey, I'm using Google Cloud, or hey, I'm using AWS, or hey, I'm using Microsoft Azure, or IBM SoftLayer. These are like enterprise cloud tools that we're all using, and these blockchains are very much like that. Users and a lot of people at this conference, what excites me about NFTs right now is this is the first time in blockchain that I can remember where we're not talking about asynchronous Byzantine fault tolerance consensus algorithms or probabilistic Byzantine fault tolerance algorithms. Because if you were at a crypto conference 5 years ago, that's literally what the panels were about. Right? The Crypto Economic Security Conference in San Francisco, really intellectual people, super smart, Turing Award winners, talking about how their algorithms were better than someone else's. We're talking about the attestation details of like user information, or like what color is the background in your ape versus mine. And we have much more interesting people. It's a way more diverse crowd, so it's a lot more fun. We need to focus on that user experience. We need to stop the tribalism of like, oh my God, is your NFT Hedera? Can't touch it, or oh my God, I will only touch it if it's Hedera. We want to onboard lots of people from all over the world using NFTs, regardless of what protocol they're on. And I'm supportive of NFTs on the Bitcoin blockchain. I'm supportive of NFTs on the Hedera Hashgraph network. But we've got to figure out a way to make NFTs easier to use, create more utility, and then find a way to work together, because we're not competing with each other. We're trying to figure out how to get everyone outside, not at this conference, to use NFTs. And that's an exciting problem to try to solve.
That's really well put. I think Ian and Larry were just talking about how we're at like 1999 right now for Web3. And this is 1999, 2000. The dot-com bubble bursts, and this is when you build. This is when the internet became the internet. And as somebody brought up a great point, most of you won't remember the birth of the internet, but browsers were a big issue. So you had like Netscape and other browsers, and some websites would only work on Netscape. Some websites would only work if you were on the AOL.com browser. And it's kind of the same thing now, if you think about it. The interoperability isn't there. Now you go to a website, it's Safari, it's Firefox, it's Chrome, whatever, everything's gonna open up and work. And that interoperability and cross-chain solutions, bringing it back to security, is such a massive point, because that layer of vulnerability is when you hop from one chain to the other. So solving those problems, and to Jordan's point, the tribalism, just stop it. It's kind of like, it's okay to have little friendly rivalries, but we're all working towards the same goal, which is mass adoption. So we can talk about Bitcoin, and we can talk about NFTs, and we can talk about security and all of our different chains that we're supportive of, but we're all in this together. Like, there's a big pie out there, and there's plenty for all of us.
I think I'd largely agree with and I tend to, as I was saying to Jordan, I tend to be kind of like called the maxi in the room, right? Even though like I'm pretty much open to all types of innovation. I've explored like loads of different things. You know, I go into maxi spaces on Twitter, and they're like, get out of here, like you shouldn't be doing any kind of S-coin or whatever it is, right? So I believe in the interoperability, definitely, and the innovation, as I said, that there should be a number of different solutions, especially making things easier for people, general people who are not technical minded, to be onboarded, right? But one thing that I also believe in is that we started this for a mission of kind of like freedom, decentralization, and the old kind of saying or trope is fix the money, fix the world. Not do everything else with the money, because then we're just in the same system that we started off with in the first place. And it kind of makes it all pointless to do all of this stuff that we're doing now. It's had a great explosion. We've seen great creators come into the space. We've seen great innovations happening. But I jumped into like a few Twitter spaces and people are like, oh yeah, we remember Bitcoin because Bitcoin's the OG. So we've always got to learn about the history, and everybody keeps saying that. And I'm like, well, if Bitcoin's so history, tell me where the TVL is right now. Tell me where institutions are putting their money. Tell me where the smart money goes. Yeah? Because when I guarantee that everybody else in this room is going to say, okay, well, we're looking at the price of Bitcoin. Oh, when you get up in the morning, you might look at what's in your portfolio, but everybody's saying, oh, is Bitcoin up? Or is Bitcoin down? Because that's what people are fearful of. You know, and I often ask the question, what happens if Bitcoin goes to $1.01? What happens to everything else? At that point, Bitcoin is still doing what it's supposed to do at $1.01 from now. Even if we went all the way down from 69K to $1.01, Bitcoin has proven itself to do what it's supposed to do. But ask yourself, where will everything else be at that point? Yeah? So I understand all of the innovation and I'm 100% for it, yeah? And I'm not the Maxi, so don't kill me, don't burn me at the stake, right? Yeah? But I think we have to understand why this system was created, why this decentralization was created, and why the vision that we've all kind of run with, and in some ways, some people have just co-opted it blatantly, right? And that's how people are getting scammed, that's how people are getting rug pulled, and no matter how easy we make it for people to onboard, if they're not understanding fully what they're onboarding to, it is the same as you signing a contract without reading it, which is quite a bit of a, you know, funny one for what we're actually talking about. But yeah, sorry, go on, Andreas.
Yeah, so I mean, there's definitely a reason why we chose to do our NFTs on Ethereum, and we saw, I mean, we started out testing it with Polygon, but we quickly saw that they had some disruptions, maybe not necessarily in terms of security, but in terms of, you know, delays on the blockchain and stuff like that, maybe not ready for the kind of capacity that they were looking for. And now with Reddit, I mean, it's maturing for sure. So I mean, it's like we will probably have support for many different blockchains. And as you mentioned also, it's like, you know, it doesn't really matter as long as the blockchain is big enough and secure. I think that there's plenty of room. And I mean, I used to be a Bitcoin maxi as well, so I'm kind of down with what you're saying there. I mean, it's like people will still look at Bitcoin. To most of the boomers out there, to most of the, you know, people who are not that into crypto, they think that like there's Bitcoin and then there's some other stuff. So I mean, Bitcoin still holds the narrative in that sense. I believe so, at least.
Yeah, I just want to comment, Nat, totally agree, man. And I'm sympathetic to you getting the Bitcoin maxi hate. Like I'm not trying to, you know, we wouldn't be here without Bitcoin, right? I mean, January 3rd, 2009, Chancellor on brink of second bailout. Bitcoin was a reactionary political statement to the 2008 financial crisis. People were fucking pissed off that banks were getting bailed out and money was being printed, and look what money printing has led us to. We printed a lot of money as governments in the last 3-4 years, and who's hurt? It's the average person who can't afford milk or you know, a taxi ride or something along those lines. So agree with the ethos. Absolutely agree that our entire ecosystem is really, really, really in trouble if Bitcoin were to go to zero. Bitcoin needs to be there, and we're all kind of depending on its success, because when capital flows into Bitcoin, you've got more capital on the blockchain. Capital can then flow, people can take profits and flow that into Ethereum and into NFTs. If there's no money in Bitcoin, there's likely not going to be a lot of capital, you know, being traded. WBTC has a big circulating market cap, for example, on and lots of liquidity pools on the Ethereum blockchain, and a lot of that has flown into NFTs. I think a lot of that is responsible even for the last the exuberance we saw in the market 6 months ago. So it's going to be important. I only mean to comment on, you can love Bitcoin and love NFTs, and not just love Hedera NFTs or Ethereum NFTs, but love Bitcoin NFTs and just love NFTs in general, and not give a shit about what protocol those NFTs are on. Right? What is that NFT doing for me? What can I use it for? I would summarize Bitcoin is emblematic of the sort of internet of money, the internet of like currency. That's how I think about it, at least. And then we think of NFTs as the internet of value, or the internet of everything else, where you've got, you know, we believe everything of value in the physical world will be represented in the digital world in the form of a token. Where those tokens live, I care less about, as long as, you know, they're not being harmful to people and we can all use them, and, you know, let's try not to destroy our planet at the same time.
Without a doubt, and I think as we get to mass adoption, all of these things that we do now, like writing down our seed phrases and talking about Hedera versus Polygon, nobody's going to care down the road. They want to know, is it fast, does it work, is it cheap? That's it. And there's going to be interoperability amongst layer ones. So that's kind of wraps up all. But Nat, I wanted to touch on one thing that I think is so important that you said, and we're getting towards the end of the day, and everybody's going to get on planes and trains and go home. And for those of you who are newer to the space, I teach a course in New York at the Fashion Institute of Technology, teaching students to basically go from an idea to a mint. And we're way behind our syllabus. And I keep telling them that it's important to learn the nuts and bolts, and that's part of what I'm trying to teach you. But if we don't get to some of that stuff, I can do a YouTube video and explain it to you. What I want to engender is the feeling of decentralization and the kind of sense of Web3, the ownership of your data, self-sovereign identity, all of these things that are so important. So we're all a part of it, and we all have a responsibility now, just by being here and being a part of the community. You all have a responsibility to spread the word and make sure that people understand, because we're in a precarious time, and it can go one of two ways. We can just stick with status quo. We can have the Googles and the Facebooks and everyone still maintaining our data, and they'll incorporate Web3 because it's better technology, but they'll still maintain your data. It'll be custodial wallets that you don't have control of. We can't let it happen. We gotta work our asses off to make sure that it doesn't. That means frictionless solutions. I mean, making it brain dead simple, figuring out ways to have non-custodial wallets that are easy. All of these things, this is the sense of Web3 and what it can be, and we're all responsible for it. So that's a great point talking about.
And the funniest thing that you say that, right? I talk to people a lot about how hard it is to actually set up a Bitcoin wallet, right? Now, if anyone's set up a bank account in, let's say, the last 2-3 years, you notice that all of the bank accounts now have KYC, something that if you've been in crypto for a long time, you're pretty much used to KYC, right? Banks just literally adopted KYC the other day and they think they know everything about it, right? But it takes you longer to set up a bank account with KYC, and you have to put in your personal information and give that away to somebody else, than it takes you to set up or just to learn how to set up a Bitcoin wallet and receive some sats. So if you just think about that, and you think about kind of like this ease of use thing that is going around, right? Let's have an email, or let's have a centralized system. It's not that hard to set up a Bitcoin wallet. It's not like back in the day where you had to go and you just set up a paper wallet. What's the difference between a paper wallet? What's the difference? It's not like that anymore. You can just literally set up a non-custodial wallet very simply and very easily in less time than it takes you, and with nobody's approval. And that is the main thing that what we are saying there with decentralization, with Bitcoin in this industry that we've all known to grow and love, no matter what chain it is. The main thing is that anyone can do this in a permissionless way. You don't need to ask anybody to do it. And the reason why I kind of stick with Bitcoin, I mean, again, as I said, I explore other avenues, but the reason why I and many of us kind of see Bitcoin as the true thing is because it still maintains that standard. Its community still maintains these things. True ownership, true decentralization, true privacy, true permissionless. So these are the reasons why I chose to work with Stacks to build the projects that I'm building now. I've explored Ethereum, I've explored Polygon, I've explored Solana, I've explored lots of different solutions, and I understand that they're all great, and I wish all of you the best. But yeah, it's just like, as you said, if we lose the vision of decentralization and we lose the vision of being able to take that ownership and control, we will just end up in exactly the same system that we're in, with a lot of keywords in between. Yeah.
That's brilliantly put. And especially when you start talking about currencies, digital currencies that are actually used, and you can go to the Tesco, that's the British so you can go to Tesco and pay with your crypto wallet, whether it's Bitcoin or whatever. And getting solutions that work before we see CBDCs, which terrify me personally. A central bank digital currency, the government owning basically being able to issue and control your digital assets, that's horrifying. Because you go to Tesco and you go to check out, and all of a sudden they say, oh, sorry, you've reached your saturated fat limit for the month. It can happen, because it's not your money, and it's like a whole other level of not your keys, not your crypto. Yeah.
That's somewhat dark to end on. Let's not end on the CBDC thing.
This is great.
That's really terrifying.
I
think
realize
I want
we're
to
so
end on
far.
an optimistic thought because I saw this data and I think this data gets really exciting and is like the end of the day. So thank you all for choosing to be here with us and listening. The thing that got me most excited that I saw recently is we're 350 million users of public blockchains. People with public-private key pairs that can hold crypto or NFTs, all of that. That's all the blockchains together. Whether we do anything or not, like if we go to bed for the next 3 years, at the current growth trajectory, we pass in 2025 over 1 billion users of public blockchain. Here's a couple issues, but I see them as opportunities that get me really excited. One, there's still 2 or 3 billion people on planet Earth that don't have high-speed internet connections. We got Starlink out there. We have amazing initiatives like 1 laptop per child. We're right behind food, water, clothing, and modern medicine. We've got to be giving kids computers, and we've got to be making sure they have high-speed internet connections. The great reason we get to sit up here, we've had likely our whole lives access to high-speed internet connections and devices where we can access information, and that's really exciting. 2, all those people with blockchain accounts, they're going to figure out other shit to do on blockchains. They're not just going to be buying Bitcoin, they'll find NFTs. Bitcoin was to the blockchain what email was to the internet. It was the first thing you can do. There's so much more. This conference is dedicated to the other thing you can do on blockchains after Bitcoin. And there'll be a conference after this DeFi conferences, something else you can do. There's lots of cool things to do on blockchains now. So I'm super excited about what 1 billion blockchain users look like, because I think that's 100 million NFT users. And yeah, they're going to be on Bitcoin and they're going to be on Solana and Hedera and all these other protocols, but it's going to be really exciting in 3 years' time. And there's 100 million people in the world with NFTs. I'm excited for that. So,
Alex, get out there and build everybody.